Real individuals don't engage in conversation with canines, you eccentric elderly gentleman. Frank remained seated and still on the park seating, murmuring something to the senior dog whose head was positioned on his lap. A collection of young males burst into laughter. One captured a video. This solitary veteran is engaged in a complete dialogue with his dog. They were entirely unaware. 3 hours thereafter, a black SUV arrived soundlessly. 5 Marines alighted and, without pause, neared the elderly man and saluted him in flawless unison. Frank Sullivan, aged 71, was a past Marine who had completed 3 tours of duty in Fallujah. In recent times, he resided by himself in a compact apartment with his senior dog, Bravo. Bravo was not merely any canine, he had served as a military working dog, skilled in identifying explosive devices. During a crucial operation in 2005, Bravo had safeguarded 4 Marines by locating a concealed network of IEDs that would have annihilated their patrol. Subsequent to the conflict, regulations stipulated that military dogs should either continue in service or be adopted by handlers possessing suitable accommodations. However, Frank had utilized his connections, requested favors, and submitted innumerable documents to guarantee Bravo's return home with him. "We enter together," he informed his commanding officer. "We depart together now." Bravo was elderly, his snout had turned gray, his vision was obscured by cataracts, and his auditory sense had diminished. Yet Frank never contemplated forsaking him. Their connection had been established amidst peril and bloodshed, proving more resilient than the passage of time or personal ease. Each morning, Frank would escort Bravo to the nearby park. They occupied the identical bench, Frank perusing his book while conversing softly with Bravo as though the canine comprehended every utterance. He would describe the atmospheric conditions, recall their deployments, or merely offer solace when Bravo appeared distressed. "Recall that sandstorm outside Ramadi?" Frank would whisper. "Couldn't see 3 feet ahead, but you never lost the trail. Never lost your nerve." On this specific Tuesday, a group of young men observed Frank's solitary dialogue with his canine companion. They chuckled, then retrieved their mobile phones to capture the scene. "Observe this," one announced to his associates. "The elderly gentleman believes his dog responds to him." They recorded several minutes of Frank inclining towards Bravo, speaking in hushed tones and intermittently pausing as if anticipating a reply. Within an hour, the footage was accessible online, accompanied by the inscription, "Eccentric old vet, best friend is a dog who can't even understand him." The park administrator, troubled by the disturbance, approached Frank that afternoon. "Mr. Sullivan, we've received some complaints about you talking to yourself. It's making other visitors uncomfortable." "I'm talking to my dog," Frank replied calmly. "Yes, well," the manager continued awkwardly, "perhaps you could do that at home. Some parents are concerned about their children seeing unusual behavior." Frank assented without contention. He had encountered far worse than disapproving gazes. As he unhurriedly collected his belongings, Bravo rose with difficulty, his arthritis rendering each motion laborious. Yet the canine was resolute in accompanying his human companion. "It's all right, boy," Frank murmured, gently stroking Bravo's graying head. "They can laugh if they want. You're the only one who never left me behind when the shells were falling." Bravo pressed his muzzle against Frank's hand, a gesture unchanged by the years. Together, they walked slowly toward the exit, the laughter of the young men fading behind them. 2 weeks subsequent to the park incident, Frank obtained an eviction order from the veteran-subsidized housing complex. The correspondence referenced unauthorized pet upkeep and the inability to furnish proof of service animal designation. Frank had presented the necessary forms on 3 occasions, yet the administrative process was sluggish and Bravo's military documentation was categorized under operations in which he had taken part. Each attempt at appeal vanished into bureaucratic oblivion. Lacking family to seek assistance from and possessing a meager pension that barely met essential needs, Frank divested himself of his few possessions of value and acquired an aged recreational vehicle. He situated it near the lake where he and Bravo had previously trained prior to deployment, a location that felt more like a true home than any apartment. Each day, they traversed the lake's perimeter, Frank adjusting his speed to Bravo's progressively strained movements. The dog's physical condition was deteriorating, yet his faithfulness remained steadfast. One frigid morning, Bravo collapsed, his body racked by convulsions. Frank gathered the dog into his embrace and hastened to the closest veterinary practice, a sense of dread constricting his throat. Please, he implored the receptionist, he requires immediate assistance. I possess limited funds, but I am willing to work to compensate. Anything. The young woman scarcely glanced up from her computer. We do not offer pro bono services. There is an animal refuge across town that provides lower-cost euthanasia if that is your objective. Euthanasia? Frank's voice faltered. I do not wish to end his life. I wish to save him. Sir, medical care necessitates payment in advance. It is our policy. Frank remained in the reception area, cradling Bravo's quivering form. He did not weep, he had learned long ago to suppress his suffering. Yet his weathered hands stroked the dog's coat with gentle, rhythmic motions. A youth loitering near the clinic recognized Frank from the widely circulated video, which had by then garnered thousands of derisive remarks. The boy covertly captured another segment, canine communicator still engaging in profound discussions with his four-legged confidant. By evening, new internet jokes were spreading. When your sole companion has 4 limbs and the eccentric veteran believes Fido comprehends tales of warfare. Frank paid no heed to any of it. He transported Bravo back to their RV, enfolding the dog in his own outerwear and remaining conscious throughout the night to observe his respiration. He pulverized his pain relief medication into Bravo's water, giving precedence to the dog's well-being over his own arthritic discomfort. Hang on, buddy, he whispered. We've survived worse. Remember those nights outside Fallujah? You kept me warm then. My turn now. What none of the scoffers observed was the tag still affixed to Bravo's time-worn collar. It was not a standard dog tag, but a military identification, K9 USMC 4521. Saved 4 lives. Purple Heart recipient. Even fewer would comprehend what it signified that Frank still addressed Bravo by his rank, steady corporal. Easy now. In Frank's perception, Bravo was not merely a pet. He was a fellow Marine who had never been officially relieved of his duties. The subsequent day, Frank utilized the remainder of his pension to procure antibiotics from an understanding feed store employee. It was not formal veterinary treatment, but it was the extent of what he could provide. As Bravo's health deteriorated, Frank sat by his side, reciting aloud from well-worn paperback books, the same method he had employed to maintain their composure during thunderstorms that bore an unnerving resemblance to artillery fire. A passing runner noticed the elderly man seated outside his RV, conversing earnestly with what seemed to be a gravely ill dog. Instead of offering assistance, she increased her speed and mumbled something about that peculiar homeless veteran. Frank heard but showed no reaction. He had long ceased expecting civilians to understand. The only opinion that held significance for him lay panting at his side, struggling for each breath. 3 hours subsequent to the second video's widespread circulation, an unmarked black SUV bearing government license plates drew up near Frank's RV. The vehicle halted with precise maneuverability, its engine quieting with military-grade smoothness. 5 Marines attired in dress blue uniforms alighted, proceeding with the coordinated exactitude born of years of rigorous training. Their countenances were grave, their intent clear in every stride as they neared Frank's modest abode. The most senior of the contingent, a master sergeant adorned with rows of combat decorations, rapped decisively on the RV's entrance. Mr. Frank Sullivan? Frank opened the door, one arm still cradling Bravo, who had become too feeble to stand. Confusion flickered across his face at the sight of the uniformed men. Sir, the master sergeant said, rendering a perfect salute. I'm Master Sergeant Reynolds. The men with me are Lieutenant Harris, Corporal Martinez, Lance Corporal Wilson, and Private First Class Dawson. Frank returned the salute instinctively, muscle memory from decades ago. Sir, continued Lieutenant Harris, stepping forward, Bravo pulled me out of a compound in Ramadi when my team was pinned down. And you never abandoned him when regulations would have separated you. Now it's our turn to ensure neither of you is left behind. All 5 Marines saluted again, this time directing their gesture as much to Bravo as to Frank. We're here to transport you both to the Naval Veterinary Hospital at Bethesda. Bravo has been reactivated to honorary service status under the Battle Buddies Forever program. Full medical care has been authorized. Frank's weathered countenance showed no feeling, yet his eyes shimmered. Bravo can hardly stand. He may not. Sir, interjected Corporal Martinez gently, we're prepared for that. From the SUV, they retrieved a stretcher designed for canine patients. With practiced care, they helped Frank transfer Bravo onto it, securing the elderly dog with straps that were firm yet gentle. The people who recorded those videos. Frank began hesitantly. "Are being addressed, sir," Master Sergeant Reynolds stated flatly. "The commandant himself saw the footage this morning. He had some choice words about respecting those who've served, including our four-legged Marines." News outlets arrived as the procession moved toward the vehicle, but Reynolds blocked their cameras. "This isn't a photo op. This is about doing right by our own." One persistent reporter managed to capture the story but honored the Marines' request to keep cameras at a distance. Her article, published the next day, carried the headline, "Dog Can't Speak, but 5 Marines Stood Up for One Silent Call." At the veterinary hospital, Bravo received continuous care from specialists in canine geriatric medicine. The young man who had disseminated the derisive videos issued a formal apology after his commanding officer, he was an ROTC cadet, established the connection. "I didn't understand," he confessed on camera, his voice unsteady. "I thought it was just an old man talking to a pet. I didn't know Bravo was a decorated war dog. I didn't know about their history." Meanwhile, a collective of veterans from 3 adjacent states pooled their resources and contacts. Within days, they had obtained a small house for Frank, unencumbered by a mortgage, through a veterans assistance program situated near a lake with accessible walking trails suitable for Bravo's condition. The Homeowners Association regulations that typically prohibited pets had been unanimously waived after their story became known. 2 weeks thereafter, as Bravo's health had stabilized sufficiently for his discharge, the hospital arranged a formal proceeding. The canine, previously regarded merely as an elderly gentleman's animal companion, was officially bestowed with the K9 Service Medal, an honor authorized years prior but never conferred. Frank stood with dignity as he accepted the award on Bravo's behalf, the dog positioned at attention despite his advanced age and health issues. A military photographer documented the instant. Bravo, seemingly comprehending the gravity of the event, lifted his paw in a gesture strikingly similar to a salute. As they readied to depart for their new residence, the initial 5 Marines reappeared, now accompanied by numerous others, veterans from various conflicts spanning many years. They formed 2 impeccable lines, establishing a pathway of honor from the hospital entrances to the awaiting transport. As Frank proceeded between them, Bravo slowly followed with renewed vigor. Every Marine in attendance raised their hand in salute, not solely to the man, but to the dog who had merited his position among them through valor and selflessness. "Semper Fidelis," Master Sergeant Reynolds uttered softly as they passed. "Always faithful, both of you." Each morning thereafter, Frank would recline on the veranda of his new dwelling, perusing aloud to Bravo just as he had always done. However, at present, onlookers no longer chuckled or hastened their departure. Instead, they would nod with deference, some even pausing to offer a quiet salutation. The neighborhood youngsters, previously cautioned to steer clear of that peculiar man, now solicited permission to visit. Frank received them, tenderly demonstrating how to approach Bravo without causing alarm. "Is your dog a superhero?" one small boy asked, wide-eyed. Frank smiled, a genuine expression rarely seen before. "No, son. He's just a Marine like me." The local elementary school extended an invitation to Frank and Bravo for Veterans Day. Frank declined to speak publicly but consented to be present. He sat unobtrusively at the rear while Bravo, attired in his service vest, accepted gentle caresses from children who now comprehended that heroes manifest in diverse forms. A small bronze plaque materialized at the park where Frank had once endured ridicule, installed without formal proceedings yet positioned prominently, dedicated to the service of military working dogs and their handlers, loyalty beyond words. The final video to circulate online depicted a vastly different scene from the initial one. It captured Frank and Bravo seated by the lake at dusk, their forms silhouetted against the diminishing light. A group of active duty Marines had come to visit, and one recorded the moment when, unbidden, they all fell silent as Bravo lifted his muzzle to the setting sun and let out a howl, a sound both sorrowful and dignified. The veterans present understood it was the sound of remembrance. Frank's hand rested on Bravo's back, steady and sure. Neither required words anymore. There are narratives that do not necessitate applause, only the quiet acknowledgement that sacrifice was made, that service was rendered. And sometimes an old dog and an aging man, in quiet companionship, remind an entire generation of what it means to hold fast to honor when the battles are long past.